Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Office Hours. I'm your host, Ziana Ali, and today's episode is one of those that sits at the intersection of everything I love talking about: politics, power, identity, and how we navigate through that all as something as ordinary as clothing. Today's topic is fashion and the female body as a political space. I want to start by saying the body, especially the female body, has never been neutral. It's not just flesh and fabric. It's a site of control, of rebellion, of desire, and of discipline. We often treat fashion like it's surface level. We look up trendy things on Pinterest, TikTok, etc. I literally sound like a millennial right now. But fashion is political theory in fabric form. Every cut, every silhouette, every color reflects power structures: who belongs, who doesn't, who gets to take up space, who gets told to shrink. Think about it. The miniskirt, the hijab, the power suit, the sweatpants, they all say something about how we understand gender, class, sexuality, race, and respectability. Political science is the study of power, and fashion is one of the most visible forms of it. It's where ideology meets the body. So let's dive deep into how fashion shapes not just how women look, but how they live. Let's start with history, because every hemline has a history. In the 19th century, corsets were marketed as elegant, but they were really instruments of control. They disciplined the female body to fit patriarchal ideals: a cinched waist, fragile posture, restricted movement. The message: a beautiful woman is a controlled woman. Then came the 1920s, the flapper era. Women chopped their hair, flattened their chests, shortened their skirts. And it wasn't just a trend, it was a rebellion. After World War I, women were entering the workforce. They were drinking, they were smoking, they were voting. The flapper dress symbolized freedom from domesticality, from Victorian morality, from the corset itself. Fast forward to the 1950s. Dior's new look: nipped waists, full skirts, hyper femininity. This was right after World War II, when women had filled industrial jobs while men were at war. The new look told them, go back home, go soften, go domesticate, be submissive. Fashion moves in cycles, and each cycle mirrors political tensions. The 1970s feminist movement brought jeans, unisex fashion, and second wave slogans like burn the bra. In the 1980s, the power suits and shoulder pads were a huge thing. Women performing masculinity to be taken seriously in male-dominated workplaces. And today, the Y2K revival, the obsession with low-rise jeans, returns us to a time when the female body was hyper-surveilled. A reminder that progress isn't linear. As Susan Bordo wrote in Unbearable Weight, the body is a cultural text, written by history. Each trend tells us who's in control and who is resisting. So let's get theoretical for a second, because you guys know I am a sucker for political theory. Michel Foucault in Discipline and Punishment, which I've spoken about in a previous episode about power, argued that modern societies maintain power not just through laws or governments, but through the discipline of bodies. We internalize control, we self-police. The corset might be gone, but the logic remains. Diet culture, plastic surgery, fitness obsession all tell us that a disciplined body equals moral worth. Fashion becomes a way we enact this discipline. We dress appropriately, we contour, we smooth, we slim, all to align with what is considered respectable. Judith Butler, in Gender Trouble, pushes this further. She argues that gender is not something we are, it's something we do. And one of the main ways we do gender is through fashion. Our clothing performs femininity or masculinity. It signals identity, belonging, and power. When women wear oversized blazers, combat or buzz cuts, they're not breaking style rules, they're breaking a social script. Feminist theory Sara Ahmed also reminds us that comfort itself is political. She writes that feminist is the discomfort of not fitting into the world. And fashion often tells women how to fit later. From dress codes to school uniforms to workplace professionalism, the female body is policed under the guise of order and respect. But every time a woman bends or breaks that rule, it's a political act. Now, moving on to another one of my passions, colonialism. Fashion doesn't exist in a vacuum. It is global and it is deeply colonial. Colonial powers didn't just take land, they imposed aesthetics. They defined what was civilized and what was modern with what was primitive. Indigenous and colonized people were forced to abandon traditional dress. Think of British colonial officers banning Indian men from wearing turbans, or ministries forcing Indigenous women into Victorian dresses. Clothing was used as a tool of domination, erasing identity under the name of modernity, etc. Fast forward to now, those same aesthetics are being rebranded on Western runways as exotic, inspirational. African prints on Paris catwalks, Indigenous beadwork on boho chic models. As Bell Hooks says, this is eating the other. Consuming cultural differences as style without understanding its meaning, aka cultural appropriation. The global fashion industry still centers whiteness as the aesthetic norm. Campaigns say diversity, but it's often tokenistic. One black model in a sea of white faces, or plus-size models who are still sample sized by real standards. Every trend, like the clean girl aesthetic, minimalistic, slick back hair, dewy skin, are rooted in Eurocentric beauty standards, or beauty ideals. When women of color wear the same look, they're called ghetto or unprofessional. When white women do it, it's effortless. Oh my God. Fashion then mirrors global hierarchies. Who gets celebrated, who gets copied, and who gets erased. From my personal experience, I work in the service industry, and when I was younger, I worked with this one girl, and she used to always compliment my curly hair. And one day she told me that she too has curly hair, but she never wears it as such. And I was like, why not? Like, if it's damaged, like I think you wearing it natural will help it heal a little bit. And she goes, no, I would never wear my curly hair to work. It's so unprofessional. What? You've literally been complimenting me. What? I don't understand. Thank God I did not internalize that. I was over my curly hair hate. Anyways, let's move on to pop culture, because that's where the politics of fashion is most visible. Think about Kim Kardashian. Her body is practically a case study in post-feminist capitalism. She built an empire on reclaiming sexuality, but it is a very curated, controlled version of empowerment. Her brand Skims promotes body inclusivity, but sells shapewear to sculpt the same hyper-curvy body type that the media glorifies. It's liberation sold as lifestyle. Rihanna's Savage X Fenty is another example. Inclusivity meets capitalism? She puts trans women, plus-size models, and women of color on her runway, but the show itself runs on selling desirability. And then there's fast fashion. Shein, Fashion Nova, Pretty Little Thing democratizes access to style while exploiting the global south's labor and reproducing body ideals as industrial speed. Capitalism has learned how to market feminism back to women. As Angela McRobbie called it, the post-feminist masquerade. Women appear empowered, but only within the limits that keep the system intact. Even aesthetics like that girl or clean girl on TikTok, avocado toast, Pilates, beige wardrobes, all sell discipline as empowerment. It's productivity disguised as freedom. We're told to embrace your body, but only after you've worked out, detoxed, and photoshopped it into what is acceptable. A feminist philosopher, Nancy Fraser, warns that feminism has been hijacked by neoliberalism. Fashion becomes less about liberation and more about self-management, policing ourselves to fit capitalistic femininity. But the story is not over. But the story isn't one-directional. Fashion can also be resistance, an act of reclaiming the body from both patriarchy and the Western gaze. Take the hijab, for example. In France, women fight for the right to wear it. In Iran, women risk their lives removing it. Same symbol, different contexts, but both an issue of choice. The West often misreads modesty as oppression, ignoring that for many Muslim women, the hijab represents faith, identity, and agency. Its refusal to let the body be consumed by the gaze, a spiritual and political statement. During the Black Panther movement, clothing was used to protect dignity and defiance. Leather jackets, natural hair. Similarly, indigenous designers today use fashion to assert sovereignty, reclaiming patterns and materials erased by colonialism. In these examples, fashion becomes not control, but counter control. It's about dressing for yourself, not for surveillance. Bell Hooks once said, quote, "Our bodies are the site of our deepest resistance." And nowhere is that clearer than when women dress in ways that defy both patriarchy and capitalism, when fashion becomes an act of political storytelling. Now, before we step into one of our last sections, which is the future of fashion, I want to pause and look at something I think is truly fascinating. How fashion trends have always mirrored political and economic climates of their time. If the body is political, then fashion is the most immediate language, one that reacts to crisis, prosperity, war, and revolution. Let's start with the hemline theory, a famous idea in fashion economics that says when the economy booms, skirts get shorter. When it crashes, they get longer. It sounds superficial, but history kind of proves it true. As we said before, in the 20s, hemlines rose above the knee. Women were out dancing, drinking, working, and celebrating newfound freedoms. During the Great Depression, the skirts dropped again. The visual retreat into modesty, restraint, and survival. Fashion, in that sense, tells you where the world's confidence sits. When money flows, bodies are freer in a Western notion. When fear rises, fashion retreats. World War II is another example. Fabric rationing meant shorter hemlines, boxier cuts, utility fashion. Clothing became practical, patriotic, and moralized. Women's trousers entered mainstream culture not as rebellion, but as necessity. They were working in factories, driving ambulances, doing men's work. But that wartime practicality reshaped gender norms forever. If you think 70s, flared jeans, bohemian dresses, and the counterculture style. Youth were protesting Vietnam, challenging capitalism, and experimenting with identity. Fashion reflected that anti-establishment energy, a rejection of structure, of conformity, of corporate suits. In the 80s, the power suits and shoulder pads, this was the era of neoliberalism, of Reagan, of Thatcher, of Wall Street. Fashion became about ambition. Fast forward to the 2008 financial crisis, minimalism took over. Neutral colors, plain silhouettes, normcore. Consumers rejected flashiness. Logos disappeared. It was the aesthetic of survival, of quiet luxury, as we would call it now. Now, in the post-pandemic world, we're seeing something else entirely. We're seeing a mixing of errors, a clashing of aesthetics, wearing sequins to grocery stores. It's a collective fashion screaming. We've survived. We're visible again. Political shifts shapes the wardrobe too. After 9/11, the West embraced militarized aesthetics, camo print, cargo pants, structured boots. After the Me Too movement, we saw red dresses, black gowns on the red carpet. Fashion turned to protest. Even the pandemic created a new uniform, the sweatsuit. Comfort became political, a statement against overproduction and exhaustion. Fashion always absorbs the mood of the moment. When we say fashion is a cycle, what we really mean is history is a cycle. The world swings between freedom and fear, prosperity and panic, and the body is the first to reflect it. That's why fashion historians often call clothing the hemline of history, because before you see political change in the headlines, you'll see it in the streets. Moving on to what does the future look like for fashion and the politics of the body? We're living in the digital age. Even our avatars or bitmojis are politicized. Instagram filters, slim noses, and smooth skins. Algorithms favor Eurocentric beauty. The digital body, like the physical one, is disciplined, this time by code. But there's resistance too. Digital creators are pushing for authentic representation, body positivity, liberation, gender fluid fashion. Designers like Harrison Reed are challenging gender binaries and racial hierarchies. The genderless fashion movement, images of clothing as expressions, not of expectations. There's also a shift towards slow fashion and ethical production, a politics of care that connects bodies to labor, environment, and sustainability. And on social media, the get ready with me culture, women sharing their dressing routines, scars, insecurities, and reclaiming vulnerability as a strength. Fashion's future might not be about perfection, but about plurality, about many ways of being beautiful, visible, and valid. So, what does that all mean? Fashion has always been more than fabric. It's ideology made visible. Every outfit carries the weight of history, power, class, race, resistance. The female body has been dressed, undressed, resisted, celebrated, and policed, all to maintain and challenge power. The fact that women can now use the same language, fashion, to tell their own stories is revolutionary. The question isn't what are you wearing, it's what does your clothing say about the world you've navigated? Because the body is a text and fashion is the ink. So maybe next time you get dressed, you will ask yourself, is this just style or is this survival? And remember, power doesn't always sit in parliaments or courts. It sits in closets, mirrors, and selfies. And thank you guys so much for listening. I'll see you again next week. Until next time, stay curious, stay politically aware. And remember, the personal is political. And so is the damn outfit. Bye, guys.